Cutting your sales cycle in half sounds pretty impossible, right? But that's exactly what Sandler Trading did with HubSpot. They used Breeze, HubSpot's AI tools, to tailor every customer interaction without losing their personal touch. And the results were pretty incredible. Click-through rates jumped 25%, qualified leads quadrupled, and people spent 3 times longer on their landing pages. You can go to HubSpot.com to see how Breeze can help your business grow. Hot off the presses, good morning, everybody. Today's Monday, May 19th. I'm Jon Weigell here with Darian Woods from NPR's The Indicator, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. Companies across the board are demanding workers to return to the office. That's nothing new to you or me. But as of a few weeks ago, Uber is leveling up its RTO policy from 2 to 3 days a week and also increasing the employee month-long sabbatical threshold from 5 years to 8 years of service. Employees are understandably outraged through the corporate world, but is RTO actually working for these companies? We'll get to that in a bit with Darian, but first let's give you the hits and headlines in business and tech. Getting us started today, Spotify removed 200 fake podcasts advertising the sale of opioids and other prescription drugs following a Business Insider investigation. The podcasts directed listeners to websites imitating legitimate online pharmacies, and many of these episodes, which were about under a minute long, were devoid of content other than pushing listeners to buy controlled substances. Rough. Next, one of the sharks is officially out of the water. Mark Cuban left his chair on the hit show Shark Tank to continue his pursuits in the sports world. So Cuban created a $750 million private equity fund called Harbinger Sports Partners to seek minority stakes in NBA, NFL, and MLB franchises. Of course, Mark Cuban has a history with the Dallas Mavericks, and he's trying to expand his sport portfolio. Or should I just call it Sportfolio? From there, we go to a media merger. Charter Communications and Cox Communications have agreed to a merger that values the latter at $34.5 billion. That's big. If approved, the new company would be one of America's biggest TV and internet providers and stand a better chance competing with the likes of Comcast and Verizon. Gotta love some cable wars. On to some pharmacy news. Rite Aid, which recently, as we said, filed for bankruptcy, sold its pharmacy assets across over 1,000 locations to rivals, including Walgreens, CVS Pharmacy, Albertsons, and Kroger. Rite Aid CEO Matt Schroeder said the sale will ensure, quote, a smooth transition for customers while preserving jobs for some of our valued team members. I just don't know where they're going to work. And finally, Epic Games and Apple are still in the thick of it over App Store policies and commissions on in-app purchases. The gaming company submitted a new court filing asking a judge to require Apple to, quote, accept any compliant version of Fortnite onto the US storefront of the App Store. We'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll be in a victory royale altogether sometime soon. Okay, look. Side hustles fail when they consume all of your time. I mean, every single bit of it. The pros, though, work smarter with AI doing all the heavy lifting. To help you out, we just dropped the Side Hustle Accelerator database. You can search your exact problem for your side hustle, grab the perfect prompt, and get results. If you're struggling with marketing, content, and customer service, it's all solved in just seconds. This isn't just another tool, guys. It's your unfair advantage in a spreadsheet. So stop asking AI the wrong questions and start scaling with what actually works. You can get it for free in the link in our show notes. And you can stop right now, actually. Why don't you take a look down at those show notes and tap the link? You don't want to sleep on this. On to our main story today. We got Darian Woods here from NPR's The Indicator, and we are going to talk about return to office mandates. Do they actually work? Do they not work? Are companies actually profiting off them in any way? Let's talk about it. Welcome, Darian. Pleasure to have you today. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Yeah.
So return to office, RTO, it's always in the news, it seems like the past few years. And recently, Uber enforced return to office policies for 3 days a week and increased the sabbatical criteria of their company as well. So what do you make of kind of another big tech company in the space throwing on these hard policies now?
I mean, it makes a lot of sense from one perspective, but then there's this kind of hard to calculate other sense. And so people generally are more productive in the office by a few percentage points, maybe up to 10 percentage points at the higher end. Mentorship is better when you're face-to-face. There's been a pretty rigorous study done by two economists, Natalia Emanuel and Emma Harrington. And they found that when people are actually in the same office, there's a lot more feedback given on developers' code. And even when they're just in different buildings, different office blocks that are kind of maybe a couple of blocks away from each other, people are getting less feedback from those senior employees. And so from the perspective of the company, that aspect is pretty compelling. When people are there, they're going to be learning through eavesdropping. They're going to be having reduced frictions between, oh, how do I open this particular document? I can just ask the person next to me. But then there's this other side that's kind of harder to calculate, which is the people that you're attracting and the well-being of the staff. And when you're at home, you can mix and match caretaking.
Sure.
Maybe you've got kids, maybe you've got relatives that need caretaking. And so that can attract people who otherwise wouldn't be able to be in the office. And so that's a great benefit for the company. And then there's reduced costs on office space.
Sure.
And so you kind of need to bring everything into the totality, but let's go through the evidence.
Yeah, let's talk about the evidence. First of all here, I wanted to ask about what companies exactly gain from instilling these policies? Do they gain anything financially? I mean, you definitely talked about collaboration. So can we just talk about what these companies are really gaining from having people back working in desks and such?
Yeah. So it's, I think, productivity from the perhaps more junior staff. The more senior staff may actually find themselves more productive when they're at home. They don't have to spend so much time mentoring and helping other people.
Sure.
But from an organizational perspective, that isn't good for the company. And so that is one thing they gain. Those reduced frictions are very important. And then there's this aspect of control, supervision, that's kind of harder to assess.
Sure.
There is a sense, I think, that maybe there are companies that are trying to actually reduce the size of their workforces, and this is a way of testing who is actually willing to go the extra mile for the company.
Yeah.
Sometimes literally, because we know that people are living further away from the office.
And some companies, even like Amazon, has offered employees some money to relocate to a closer location so that they can come back to work. And a lot of people online and in person actually have been reacting very negatively to these return to office policies, given that they were granted some glimpse of freedom and being able to live away from work and being able to, do their things during the day, go to their doctor's appointments, do whatever they need to do. And yeah, many people say it's because these companies actually want to trim the fat a little bit is a big reason that they're doing a return to office. What's your take on that? And if these companies actually do want people to quit instead of doing mass layoffs like every other company?
Yeah, so a study by the economists Jose Maria Barrero, Nicholas Bloom, and some others found that people now live an average of 26 miles from their employer, which is way up from 15 miles in 2019. And it's higher for knowledge jobs. People moved to different states, especially high income earners looking for lower top tax rates, maybe cheaper housing. And so if you're asking people to return to office, that is a massive lifestyle difference. Now, these are kind of these two competing tensions, which is maybe it's your most productive, most highly compensated workers who are the people that have moved quite far away and may have also options. And then they may say, no, I have that option of being able to work for other companies that will let me work from home. And so that's a problem for the company if those people are the ones that leave. But then also there is evidence that lower productive workers can be the ones who are really attracted to work from home roles. And this is a finding found from those economists, Emma Harrington and Natalia Emanuel. And so do corporations actually want people to quit? Maybe some cases on the margins. It may depend company to company. But I do think there is a genuine belief by these leaders that, if we're to make the best possible company, if that's the primary objective, there's a belief from some of these executives that at least a few days in the office is important for that.
Right. They're really trying to rally them across the board, their employees, that is. We've seen like Uber, JP Morgan, all these bigger companies trying to get everybody back in. And yeah, people, as we said, are not responding well in a lot of cases.
No. And people may have signed on for these roles that were stated as work from home.
As a remote role, right.
We also know about the endowment effect, where this has been shown over and over again in psychological surveys. It is much worse to have something taken away from you once you have it. The reward doesn't register as much as when it was taken away from you.
Exactly.
So this is a reset for a lot of people. Something's being taken away from them. You can understand why people are upset.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and obviously, there's maybe not a ton of concrete data on this. Maybe you could tell me otherwise, but have the return to offices been working well for the companies that have implemented them? Have we kind of seen a spike in their productivity and their earning potential? Is there any kind of concrete thing to support that it actually works better for these companies in the long run?
Yeah. And so everything I've said, I've talked about some pros, some cons, and once you add them all together, what is the net effect? And one study from Revelio Labs found that companies that have mandated full-time office attendance expanded by 0.3%, whereas companies that had a more flexible working arrangement, they grew at twice that rate, at 0.6%. And so that indicates that when you have that higher degree of flexibility, you can hire more easily. And maybe that trumps a few percentage points of lost productivity on a day-to-day basis.
Wow, that's a very interesting metric. I had no idea, actually. So it sounds like from what you're saying, hiring remote can actually be beneficial because you can hire a lot of people for a lot of different tasks that otherwise couldn't be in-house necessarily.
Yeah. And to be clear, this is more flexible work arrangements. Maybe it does include you have to come to the office 1 or 2 days a week. It may not be full time, but it is clear that this is a huge benefit for workers, that they really appreciate it. Maybe even more than a pay rise. And so you got to take this all as a whole. And for a lot of companies, I think a fully in-person environment may be shooting themselves in the foot, but it may depend on the specific arrangements, the specific people. But I think a little bit of flexibility, but then also coordination. If you are coming in, having one person coming on Monday, the other person Tuesday, the other person Wednesday, when you're not actually getting that conversations in the office, you're not getting that mentorship, like that can be the worst of all worlds.
Right.
I'll just, quick anecdote is that I'm in the office 4 days a week, roughly. I have 1 day a week. Usually that's a bit more flexible. But yet my team is scattered all across the country. So I take the subway in, I do the hassle, I smell the sweat of my fellow New Yorkers, and then I go on Zoom.
Yeah.
And so I spoke to these experts, and they're like, no, that's the worst of all possible worlds.
You're just alone. You're isolated there.
I have people from other teams at NPR that I speak to, but my team at The Indicator is spread around the world. And you know what? We hired people that we may not have been able to hire if we only looked at one city. And so
absolutely,
I think we benefit on net. But yeah, it is sometimes a little lonely. I wish we were all together sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, there has been just this big paradigm shift, it seems, lately in kind of the work-life balance, especially in younger generations, wanting more freedom, more flexibility, whereas maybe in the past 20 to 30 years, it's been more of like a grind mentality.
Yeah.
What do you think the future of this return to office thing is? Do you think there's a moment where companies now will mostly ask everybody to be in? What do you think is kind of the outcome of this over time?
So yeah, there are a lot of flashy headlines and people irate and, colorful language at JP Morgan Chase from Jamie Dimon. We've got Uber, obviously. We've got Amazon employees being pretty irate.
Oh, yeah.
But actually, if you look at the numbers, we've kind of settled into this stable place where the average workday is at the workplace in the US, but maybe 1.5 days a week are remote. And especially for office workers, obviously that increases and compared to jobs where you just cannot work remotely. But I think we're going to be into this kind of settling phase, and maybe we'll start to have managers that recognize some need for flexibility, and these big edicts from on high might start to drift away.
Yeah, I mean, that could be very well what happens. People on the local level, let's say, who can say, listen, if you need to take Friday to take your kid somewhere, take Friday and, do that. So on a micro level, I think you're correct in that nothing much will change. But on these high level, big splashy headlines, I'm sure we'll see a lot more in the near future. But Darian, thank you so much for coming on today. It was great to hear from you and great to pick your brain on this subject. So thanks for bringing your knowledge here.
Yeah, thanks, Jon. Appreciate it.
Okay, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks everybody for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of HubSpot Media. Our editor is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. Got tons more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go sign up at thehustle.co/email and follow us on Instagram at The Hustle Daily. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good Monday. Hey everybody, I've been listening to this great podcast lately. You got to check it out. It's called Content is Profit. It's hosted by Luis and Fonzie Camejo, and it's brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. So in this podcast, you can discover the secrets and strategies on how your business can achieve the frictionless sale. We talk about frameworks, strategies, tactics, and bring special guests to bring you all the information you need in order to turn your content into profit. Recently, they did a whole episode on micro creators and UGC and how those things are transforming the social media industry, especially for profit. They had a guest on, William Gassner, who is the co-founder of Stack Influence. So definitely check that episode out if you want to learn more about the social media landscape as it is currently. You can listen to Content as Profit wherever you get your podcasts.